Morning. Oh, I should check and see if I, like, changed the name of my stream. I don't remember if I did that. I did. All right, good evening. Or sorry, I'm used to that. Good morning, folks. My name is Phil Gallagher. I run Thraben University, a legacy site dedicated to Death and Taxes, and today we're going to be playing Death and Taxes. I'm not going to do sort of a dedicated deck tech today because I've already talked about this deck list quite a bit in my recent article up on Thraben University. So check that out if you want to see all the details of the card choices. To just kind of briefly go over it, Mirran Crusader is really good right now, so we're playing 3 of those. I haven't liked Aethersworn Canonist lately, so I'm trying out Chalice of the Void in that slot. And Walking Ballista is really good in the mirror. Good enough for a deck tech. I just want to play some games this morning. Had some bad beats at the beginning of this league. Got paired against Big Eldrazi, followed by Spanish Inquisition, both of which are pretty difficult matchups. So we'll see if I can redeem this one, but we're probably going to start another league pretty quickly here. This hand doesn't actually do anything. This hand's significantly better. That first hand is what I think of as a sort of a, I'll take this Wasteland. It's good against most of the format. That first hand is what I consider to be like a trap hand, where like you have a good mix of lands and spells, but the hand still just does nothing. That's unfortunate. I probably like topped Wasteland versus Miracles. There's a chance it's still Sneak and Show, and I can get some work done. That chance is slowly decreasing. I just don't really think that Caracas is all that good right now. Like, the numbers on Reanimator have died down a whole lot. And there's just so much Wasteland in the format that I value the stability of my mana base over basically everything else right now. We're playing the list that I ran at the GP. If you want to see that list, click on the Cardboard Live extension that's on screen. It's annoying. So it's the little like card with a microphone on it that you'll see on the left-hand side of the screen. That'll let you see everything. My opponent votes for the Aether Vial. sort of recognizing what is actually important in this matchup. Luckily for me, I am now going to do a shit ton of damage. Morning, JD. Now, hopefully my opponent can't just, like, Terminus. They haven't cantripped yet. If they can, like, Portent into Terminus here, I'm, like, super, super in trouble. Otherwise, my opponent's pretty close to dead. Like, I'll whack them for 9 on my next turn. I mean, we never left being on Team Crusader. I love Crusader. It's been one of my, like, pet cards for years. JD, I'm not sure what you're talking about. Terminus, like, goes and puts everything on the bottom of the library, so... So a token is technically a creature token. Okay, my opponent just, like, had stone cold nothing that game. That's actually kind of impressive. I mean, JD, like, we've all said some stupid stuff in the mornings. No worries there, buddy. All right. So, here's the pile of cards that I'm going to bring in. My sideboarding gets a little bit weird because of this Chalice of the Void. So I go minus my Swords to Plowshares, minus my Moms, go -1 Wasteland, -1 Jailer. Yeah, Potentia, this is my Richmond list. If you want to see the full list at any given time, click on the cardboard live extension that's on the left side of the screen, and it'll bring it up. No, I just trim 1 Wasteland. Like, Wasteland's still fine in the matchup. If they're playing, like, Search for Escanta, you get to, like, nug that land, or, like, the tundras that they have to fetch sometimes are vulnerable. And I also just need, like, a lot of mana to do the stuff that I want to do, especially in the post-sideboard games. So, like, it's just tapping for colorless is fun. This doesn't do anything early, so it's not good enough. This is a medium hand. Right, and I think in Rug, boarding out all of your wastelands does make sense. But, like, if you look at my mana requirements, like, most of your mana requirements are just, like, colored symbols, right? Whereas most of mine are colored plus colorless. And if a lot of my stuff involves, like, recruiter chains and equipping and porting them, I just, like, need more land. Morning, Hellclan. Opponent has shuffled. As a statement on the metagame as a whole right now, I do think that Chalice of the Void is a very powerful card right now. Opponent confirmed to have cantrips in their deck. In this deck, as it is built right now, Ancient Tomb is not good enough. But that doesn't mean there doesn't exist a version where Ancient Tomb is good. So what are my next couple of turns? I guess that's what I need to figure out. I think I want to get the Sanctum Prelate. There's an argument to just get like a Stoneforge Mystic, so I can go like Stoneforge and Port next turn. And I'm always happy when my opponent gets rid of a Monastery Mentor. MTG, thank you very much for auto-hosting. Do I have an opinion on the transition to accumulated knowledge over predict? With the metagame as fair as it is right now, I understand people wanting to play accumulated knowledge. It is, like, certainly a little bit clunky, though. So, like, accumulated knowledge is going to be better against things like Miracles, Grixis Control, and Death and Taxes, whereas your predicts are going to be better against like the combo decks and the games where you need more cards sooner. And Ill with Phil, thank you very much for resubbing. 7 months is a long time, and I do really appreciate your support. Alright, so my opponent knew that I tutored up the Sanctum Prelate, and then they tapped out, so I don't think they're going to have a Terminus on top. So I'm just going to do this. And this time I'm going to get a Stoneforge Mystic. On the off chance that I do actually get Terminist, I would like the ability to like go Sanctum Prelate and Stoneforge Mystic in the same turn. That seems pretty powerful. This attack might mean Supreme Verdict, but if it's not Supreme Verdict, then I just want to take 2. Yeah, our opponent has done a couple of interesting things this game. I agree. Our opponent's also F6, apparently. I don't know that the things that my opponent is doing are wrong, but like Mentor is an awesome card in this matchup. Their attack's weird if they can't sweep my field, because otherwise just holding it back saves them damage from recruiters, and they're like in no position to be like actively racing me anytime soon. It looks like the accumulated knowledge on my upkeep to like try to draw into a blind Terminus, like that makes sense. I guess like the Swords of Plowshares on the Thalia, like before I can play a Caracas is fine, but like what's the game plan here? Like how are they winning? That I don't currently understand. Why would you play a deck that can't win? Yeah, I see what you're getting at. Oh god, please double block my Thalia. Do it. Do it. I'm fine with committing another creature to the board, because this one cantrips, right? So this gets me my sword, and just gives me the greatest chance of like actually presenting lethal next turn. Now we mercilessly port my opponent off of double white. I don't care that they're floating here. If they have a removal spell, they have a removal spell, but I do not want this mana to go into their draw step under any circumstances. Orem, I know what you mean. Like, sometimes when my opponent is, like, doing extremely questionable things, it's amazing how well they can draw. Alright. So, again, my opponent kind of did nothing, right? Like, they Swords to Plowshare 2 things, but they didn't actively start going into any real game plan. Like, Miracles needs to, like, wipe the board, keep things clear, maybe counter a couple of things, and then drop, like, a Jace or a Mentor. Like, my life total, you know, I didn't really change. My opponent got one Snapcaster hit in, but my opponent just cast a couple of accumulated knowledges and died. Yeah, man, I don't think my opponent played optimally. Like, obviously, I don't know their hand, but I have a hard time believing with that many cards that that was the best my opponent could have done. That fight should have been harder. I mean, scoreboard though, right? Like, Miracles did win the GP. Okay, DN Solver, that's fair. God, are we gonna run back Miracles again? Alright. If my opponent is Show and Tell, I want to slam this Thalia. My opponent is Miracles. I actually probably just want to wait on this Thalia so it doesn't just get, like, Swords to Plowshare immediately, and I just wanted to play it on my next turn. That does give them a lot of setup time. Okay, so I think the rest of my hand is pretty good against Miracles if the game starts to go longer. I'll go get Stoneforge into a sword, and then I can start Flicker Wisping my stuff to protect it. So I think I'm going to take the upside of using Thalia here in case my opponent is Sneak and Show. I haven't watched the particular match in question, but Honorog is an insanely good Miracles player. Uh, so essentially, if you're playing Chalice with the CMC1 cards, it doesn't actually matter all that much most of the time because your Vial comes down before Chalice, and there are actually very few matchups where you keep in like both Swords to Plowshares and Chalice. It's mostly the Reanimator matchup. Sean, this is our second match of the day. We beat Miracles very easily in the first round. Now we're playing against Miracles again. Seems decent. I expect my chances of winning this game are now pretty low. I'm stumbling on mana. My opponent gets like a 2-for-1 here. I mean, still kind of a 2-for-1. Like shuffling the Snapcaster back into their deck is actively good for them. So I've got a lot of cards left, but it's very possible that I'm going to end up throwing some away just like into this counterbalance. At random, the most likely card to be on top of my opponent's deck is just a 1-drop. So I don't really love casting the Mom here, even though it can protect a follow-up card. But maybe I'm supposed to, because if I rip land next turn and, like, Mom sticks around, then this Sanctum Prelate on 1 might be pretty devastating. Yeah, alright, I talked myself into it. Ugh. I'm not going to attack with the Mom. Because if my opponent, like, brainstorms into, say, a Jace, pretty devastating for me. If my opponent gets to, like, Jace bounce my Mom, and then I'm just kind of Jace locked from there. And to whoever it was who was talking about, like, boarding out Wastelands versus Miracles, this is why I can't, like, get rid of all of them, right? I just need colorless mana to do my stuff. Supreme Verdict for Just Mob. I accept this. I'm a little confused. I'm doing quite well. Alright, I'm going to guess that there's a 2 on top of my opponent's library. Let's see if I'm right. Nope, there's a 1. There aren't actually all that many 3s in my opponent's deck, so 3 is somewhat safe from counterbalance. Not like guaranteed, because there's still things like Back to Basics and Mentor. Council's Judgment. Alright, that's pretty annoying. No, Lord Darkview. I currently don't have plans to test out 27 lands. This is probably a Palace Jailer time. So I know my opponent has Council's Judgment. I know they're drawing Flusterstorm. That leaves them with 1 unknown card. Palace Jailer is extremely likely to resolve. And if I get Palace Jailer versus their counterbalance, I'm just pretty likely to go and take over this game. Alternatively, I could just, like, cast Sword of Fire and Ice, equip, swing in this turn. I don't hate that. I think I'm just going to Jailer. And I'm not going to, like, wasteland my opponent to take them off of Force of Will, because if they have Force, then they can just pitch the Flusterstorm in their hand anyway. the off chance that they have Spell Pierce. Let's do it like this. Man. Sometimes I think to myself, Phil, you're so smart. So tapping in this way allows me to leave Swords to Plowshares up in case, like, my opponent's one other card in hand was something like Snapcaster Mage. Yeah. So now they get to draw Swords to Plowshares for their turn, and they can nug one of my critters. So I think I'll go ahead and equip to the Palace Jailer. And then post-combat, I can play Flicker Wisp, Flicker Recruiter, and Derp. I'll push one less damage, but I'll just, like, have better plays remaining. Or I could just equip to the Recruiter, force that to die, then play out Crusader and present lethal on the next turn. I mean, either way, I guess I could, like, put it on Crusader. Alright. Opponent's going to get a Brainstorm on their turn, which is, like, the best possible card they could get. Me porting them doesn't do much. I don't need to hold up Swords to Plowshares currently. So that means I should just equip my Mirran Crusader so that it can't be Jace bounced. Yeah, porting or wastelanding the fetch is the other line, that's fine. Alright, so now I'm left with the question of how much do you have a Swords to Plowshares is essentially the current question. I should move my sword to this Palace Jailer because I still am presenting 10 damage, but I diversify the way in which that damage is being dealt. Making it so that one Swords to Plowshares is significantly less devastating. I don't really want my opponent to be able to chump block with this Snapcaster Mage. So I'm just going to nug this little fella now. Super surprised that that Flusterstorm did not get shuffled away by the Flooded Strand. So now I need to guarantee that my opponent can't take the Monarch. Teferi can get rid of one creature if I play it, so I should really commit 2 creatures to the board. Hey, I'm really I'm really glad to hear that you're finally getting to catch me live. No, I think this is going to end up being significantly better. Because I'm going to get to untap my Caracas to protect the Thalia, so it's not really like I'm committing that much more to the board. Yeah, RBS, I am absolutely loving Cardboard Live. They are now one of my sponsors, and I actually approached them about it. I've been very, very happy with the extension. I've loved using it with the Legacy Premier League, and I'm just blown away by the extension. I sort of honestly think that it is going to be the future of Magic coverage. Alright, so game 1, win via Palace Jailer. So what you can't really see currently are some of the other cool features it has. If you were to run this with a paper tournament, for example, this cardboard live thing, you actually can go and like pull up metagame statistics on the fly with it, which I think is super cool. And from like a tournament organizer's size, if you get your players to submit their deck lists online, you can actually pull the deck lists directly from like Cardboard Live and just have them appear. And you can like swap them around as needed. Um, you can add like some bio data about the players that you can tab through. And one of the things I really like about it is actually that you can just, I will keep the crap out of this hand. You can actually just like copy the deck list on screen just by hitting the little copy button. I found that to be super useful. All right, show me a counterspell. I am much less comfortable with Jailer and the risks associated with it than some of my peers. So last turn I opted to play around back to basics a little bit by playing out of planes rather than a Rishavan port. And I'm a little punished here because I'm not going to get to port and wasteland this turn, but I don't really regret it. And I am just going to take the mana trade here. Man, naturally having the disenchant is daggers. All right, ponder shuffle into ponder not shuffle. Don't know exactly what my opponent is digging so hard for. While I normally name 6 in this matchup, my opponent has been super aggressively cantripping, So I don't know what exactly their hand is missing, but I'm guessing their hand is missing something. Playing the Ether Vial first because my opponent showed me a Spell Pierce last game, just in case anyone was curious about what was happening there. I think I want to get a Stoneforge. I don't have anything resembling a clock currently, and I really like the idea of getting a Sword of Fire and Ice into play. I'm a little worried about my opponent getting a Planeswalker, but I wasn't quite worried enough that I wanted to like preemptively fetch the Recruiter, because otherwise it's sort of a very weak card as a whole. Previously, it really felt like they were digging. Well, what am I doing in the next turn cycle? I think basically whatever I'm going to do, I'm going to start by playing Thalia this turn. Unfortunately, my Sanctum Prelate is gone. Otherwise, I'd like fetch that and put that on 1. Oh, Sword Equip, thank you very much for the bits. I really do appreciate that, and I hope you're enjoying the Saturday morning stream. Yeah, with a name like Sword Equip, I get what kind of life you're about. I respect it. Long pause here. I'm not sure if this means my opponent has Force of Will and they're thinking about whether or not they can actually use it, or if this means that they just have something like a Brainstorm and they're wondering if they should fire it off for mana efficiency. Oh, I'm really glad that that feedback was helpful to you. You know, you've got to do what you can with the cards you have to work with, and you know, I hope I you know, do something that actually increases your results. Yeah, Army of Thalia. I'm starting to wonder if you're right, and it's just potty break time. So my next turn is Violet Stoneforge, get a piece of equipment, cast the equipment, put it on Flicker with attack, attempt to kill Mentor. Repeat that every turn for like the rest of the game. So my mana is 100% tied up for the next turn. That means getting a 3-drop is pretty safe. And since I don't know what I'm gonna what I actually need, I'm just gonna get another Recruiter of the Guard here. Depending on how things go, it's very possible that if I get this Mentor off the board pretty easily, then my path to victory might end up being attack for a few turns and then Walking Ballista laser you to the face to finish things off. Alright, that Spyglass is a little annoying because that's going to shut off my vial. But if it shuts off the vial, then I'll just get an active Jitte. But if it doesn't shut off my vial, then I get active Sword of Fire and Ice. The Ballista's been pretty good. It's very, very good in the mirror. It's another angle of attack. Well, kind of hoping my opponent's last card isn't... Well, I'm hoping it isn't anything good. But that's a pretty good natural draw. Just going to go ahead and equip this here and kind of hope that everything works. Come on. Woo! I didn't play this land pre-combat, just in case I drew Wasteland, so I could Wasteland this Tundra. I accept this supreme verdict. I accept the crap out of this supreme verdict. Actually, if I just go 2 mana, place Stoneforge, then next turn I can put in Batter Skull and equip this. What clock's my opponent on? So this is 6, 7, so my opponent will be on a 2-turn clock either way. So I'm just going to get Recruiter. And I'm going to get a Revoker. The way I see myself losing this game is my opponent top decks a Planeswalker. And then uses that to get into multiple good cards, or uses that to deal with my sword. In my draw step, I'm going to tap down this Tundra. I 100% want this Jace dead this turn. This ensures that the Jace dies. If my opponent has Swords to Plowshares, they point at either one of my creatures, and I can equip the other. So my opponent actually did not get a card out of me there. So that wasn't all that good. Wonder if their top card is going to be like a Terminus. Nope. Yeah, the port in your own draw step is really good when your opponent's like super constrained on mana. All right, so we win that one. So game 2, win. We really won through attrition there. Like we just traded 1-for-1 with my opponents until they ran out of stuff. And they never actively stuck a Jace or a Teferi, or they didn't have a Snapcaster or anything that really let them pull ahead. With slightly different draws, their mentor might have gotten there. But not having an answer to my Sword of Fire and Ice was pretty crippling. Not that that top deck actually did anything, because like otherwise I just would have went Stoneforge, fetch jitte, cast jitte, equip jitte, and it would have ended up in approximately the same situation. But the sword ended up being better because of the Jace that came down afterwards. Yeah, mentor is gas. The card's very, very good in the matchup. But I think you're supposed to ignore it in terms of sideboarding and sideboard out all of your Swords to Plowshares. Because in a lot of situations, like a Swords to Plowshares actually doesn't do too much against the Mentor. Because if they play it when they have a lot of mana, they just, like, rattle off, get a whole bunch of tokens, and the tokens alone can be hard to beat. Or if they play it when they don't, like, when you don't have a Swords to Plowshares early, then drawing one a turn or two later is just, like, too late. So if you board down to, like, 2 Swords to Plowshares, you're not necessarily going to, like, have one at the perfect time very frequently. So I think you're just better off cutting all of them. Army of Thalia, it's the same deck list that I played in Richmond. My article from this week and the deck list tab on Thraben University both have it. But just to flash it for a second, this is what you're looking at. Alright, looks like my opponent recently has played Fox and Eldrazi Post. Is this hand good against either? Oh, I love Brightling. I think Brightling is one of the, like, best possible cards in the deck against a lot of matchups. But right now there's a ton of black decks, and Brightling isn't great against the black decks. It's stellar against, like, things like Rug Delver, Eldrazi, Miracles. So if we start going more towards that direction, like, you bet I'm going to have, like, a ton of Brightlings in my deck. But right now, when everyone's on, like, Baleful Strix in Grixis control, it doesn't make a lot of sense to play a ton of Brightlings. Oh, I'm stopped in my own draw step. I have a breakdown of, like, the fairy versus surgical thing in my article from this week if you want to read my full thoughts. This is going to be a pretty baller hand versus Delver. Let me tell you, chat. Although hopefully you already recognize that the double Swords to Plowshares, double Mom Thalia hand is good against Delver. I don't really want to get this Swords to Plowshares dazed. So I actually think I'm just going to play an Aether Vial this turn. My opponent's pretty likely to be pretty close to out of gas, so I'm okay with taking, like, a hit from this Delver in order to play my Swords to Plowshares around Daze next turn. Yeah, so Poker Dweebs, I would recommend, like, treat your first open or your first, like, big event of any nature as a learning experience. Super punished. Don't necessarily expect to do super well, but try to take in everything that you can about the format while you're there. ask questions from your opponents and try to like really extract every bit of value you can from the event. That's, I think, the best attitude going into some of your first bigger events. It's currently unclear whether or not the vial or the swords to plowshares is more important. This is not a feel-good brainstorm. So, like, unless my opponent has something like an Inquisition or a Thoughtseize, I think what I did was the optimal play. So I have absolutely no regrets on my choice there. Blech. I mean, it's not like the Inquisition is unprecedented or anything, but it's a little weird. Ugh. Okay. What is my best line? I can go Violin Recruiter, Hardcast Palace Jailer, Insectile Aberration, and try to wall these Garmag Anglers on the ground. Alternatively, I can Recruiter, get Flicker Wisp my Recruiter, get another Flicker Wisp, repeat. All right, so what happens if I do the Flicker line? If I do the Flicker line, My opponent attacks in with our... Like, if my opponent attacks in with everything, I'll trade Flicker Wisp for Delver. I'll block both. Protect one of my guys, bounce my Thalia. If I do the Palace Jailer line, I chump block. I probably chump block with the Jailer and protect this turn. I think this is the line that has the potential to push me further ahead. So I'm going to take this one. That's an insane draw. I'm not going to take any attacks here. My plan is just turtle up and try to ride the Monarch title to a win. Well, imagine what happens if I get to flicker this Jailer, right? It's just insane. I'm going to keep my Thalia rather than my Jailer here. I know I'm giving up like a great Flicker Wisp target, but I don't want my opponent to be able to like cantrip unmolested here when my hold on the game is so tenuous. Stellar. Stellar. My God. Oh my god. That's frustrating. Alright. So essentially for the post-sideboard games, I'm going a little bit lower to the ground. This hand is weak, but on the side of acceptable. I have a turn 2 removal spell for a Delver, otherwise I have a Stoneforge Mystic as a play, and since the hand just gets better when I draw lands, and I seem to be pretty good at that, hopefully this works out. Oh, like I'm not actually that tilted. Like I'm annoyed, but I'm not too worried. Ugh. Am I willing to play out this Caracas to just jam Mirror Crusader onto an empty board? I don't really want to. It's just like so bad if my opponent has a daze. But taking no game action definitely favors my opponent. This is why I'm only playing 2 Caracas, by the way. Because every time this happens, it just feels so bad. Yep. Must be a tricky brainstorm. I don't really have anything else that I can talk about as far as this game goes. Like, I don't have lands. I can't cast spells. My opponent doesn't have pressure, so they can't take advantage of that. Alright, Snapcaster Mage into Thoughtseize, which I guess takes the Walking Ballista so that Snapcaster is actually a clock. Oh, that was a very quick take on the Council's judgment. That must mean that my opponent has, like, a true name nemesis. Or that. I accept this trade. If my opponent, like, minuses to get their Snapcaster back, that's annoying, but this Lily ticking up forever will just kill me. I'm pretty dead on a number of levels here. Yes, yes, Jailer can only get creatures. It can't exile planeswalkers. That'd be absurd. I think unless my next draw is Council's Judgment, I'm probably just too far behind to ever win this game. Oh yeah, Mangara, real good against Liliana the Last Hope. Okay, we're dead. Cannot win this game now. Sort of amusingly, like, if my Caracas had been a different land, I probably still could have won this one. Like, despite how good my opponent's draw was. Alright, so game 2 loss to Stumbling on Mana. I'm not too worried about it. Like, Grixis Delver is an overwhelmingly positive matchup as a whole. Alright, chat. I'm going to take about a 2-minute break here to run and grab something to drink and use the bathroom. I will be right back, and then we'll go into some more matches. All right, I'm back, everyone. Hello, my name's Phil Gallagher. I run Thraben University, and today we are playing some Death and Taxes. If you want to see the deck list, click on the Cardboard Live extension on the left side of the screen. And if you don't like where that's at currently, you can drag it around the screen to somewhere else. We are currently 2-1 for the day in matches. I'm going to keep this. This would be like a stellar hand against something like Delver. And I think my opponent is a Delver player. Delver player confirmed. Um, I think I want to play my Swords to Plowshares around a daze. So I'm going to lead on Mom. I'd much rather have my mom get dazed. I intend on going to Baltimore. I don't have like my hotel booked and everything, but I very much plan on going. I'm going to pick this fight on my opponent's turn in case they have something like a Spell Pierce. I'll make them use their own mana. This will get a Batterskull, because if this Stoneforge lives, then the Batterskull will just completely beat out the Street Wraith. I do not have swamps, so unless my opponent plays an Urborg, this thing just gets blocked. Opponent will be looking for either one of their removal spells or a piece of discard here. Oh man, they've got it all. So I want to draw a Mirroring Crusader here. I did not draw a Mirroring Crusader here. Unfortunately, I have to just jump block. I have no other choice. Wow. All right. Alright, that was annoying. Alright, so I usually take out one Jitte, one Revoker, two Flicker Wisp, one Prelate, one Thalia. When I'm on the play for 2-path, 2 Gideon, 2 Council's Judgment, and when I'm on the draw, I board differently. No, it doesn't seem like it, but reanimating Street Wraith on turn 1 is like the best play in the deck. I mean, Death Shadow in Legacy isn't a particularly good deck, in my opinion. Like, I think it's fine. I don't think it's overpowered by any means. It's really soft against DNT. Like, they had the sort of, like, nuttiest of nut draws in order to keep up with what I was doing there. I don't think I want to play this Mom here in case my opponent is just, like, keeping their hand on the strength of a Dread of Night. So I'm just going to play a Stoneforge. If it gets dazed, I don't really care, because my hand is Baller. Hey Ken, welcome. And I'm going to take the batter skull. I'm going to make my opponent kill this, or I get a big, big idiot. And if my opponent kills this, then there's a very good chance that like my mom or my Crusader is just going to stick around. All right, well, enjoy this hand. So I think we're still on the ignore mom plan. And I'm just going to like slam these haymakers one after another, and we'll make my opponent beat them. If my opponent sticks some card like a Dread of Night or a Liliana, I have Council's Judgment for it. Otherwise, I have a Gideon for like infinite jump blockers. Well, Ken, he probably couldn't beat the Batter Skull. That was probably a forced play on his end. I want to get this mom active, but I don't think Port plus mom makes a ton of sense currently. I think I just wait to play mom until I can play mom plus another spell in a single turn. And even though the shadows are kind of small-ish now, they will get bigger pretty quickly, so I'm just going to take one out. My ideal draw is Swords to Plowshares, so I can Swords to Plowshares, put the Gurmag Angler, or like give my opponent 5 life. Jeez. It's a great hymn, getting that Gideon. It's the only card in my hand I care about. Anyway, to finish that thought, if I put my opponent to 15 by swordsing a Gurmag Angler, then the Death Shadow will also die as a result. Um, in either case, a single Swords to Plowshares is going to kill every creature that's on the board. I am not going to wasteland my opponent here. I have better use of my mana than my opponent does currently, in all likelihood. My opponent... Oh, fuck. Dark Blast. That's an insane draw. So I still want to leave myself the possibility of doing something like top deck Sword of Fire and Ice, Sword of Fire and Ice, equip, swing. So I don't want a Wasteland. Brightling will be back in the deck as soon as the metagame gets less black. Can I just race? What if I go Gideon Emblem? If I go Gideon Emblem, I hit my opponent for 6 this turn. That puts my... I chump block the Death Shadow, and I take 8, and then I just kill my opponent. Alright, let's see if this Gideon resolves first. That's step 1. My opponent just has like a daze or something like that. That's no good for me. Okay, so it happened. Alright, so if my opponent holds back the Delver next turn, what happens? If my opponent holds back the Delver, I chump block Death Shadow, I take 5, I go to 12. Hmm. Alright, so I think I make a blocker and attack with the Crusader. Then if my opponent doesn't attack the Gideon with Delver, I'm in the situation where I can just present lethal with Mirran Crusader alone on the next turn. Alright, so Gideon's being attacked by Gurmag Angler and Death Shadow, so I can't save it regardless, so there's no reason for me to block. Alright, so how do I win? I can hit my opponent to 1, or I can hit my opponent to 2. Either way, I'm chump blocking with Stoneforge Mystic. So my opponent wins if they get a removal spell. Yeah, just attacking with the Stoneforge doesn't change the clock, unfortunately. We're trying to win this game. We're trying, like, just sitting back isn't going to favor me when my opponent has so many more creatures. Yeah, so I guess I would have won that one if I had just made the emblem, because that would have played around the removal spell. Oh well. So game 2, lost to multiple creature draw. Hey, Hippie Long Ears, welcome. No, Cardboard Live is actually one of my sponsors. So I believe currently that Cardboard Live is free to use, at least for individuals. I highly recommend it. It is a fantastic streaming tool. Yeah, so on the back end, there's like a website or app that you upload your deck list to, and then it works as a Twitch extension. We'll see how much of my opponent's deck that invalidates. I'm guessing most of it. Oh man, do they have a Hooting Mandrills? Sweet. Well, guess who has a batter skull? It's Phil. Phil has a batter skull. Yeah, they've had enough. Game 1 win with file. Easy. Alright, so I'm going to want my paths. I'm going to want my council's judgments. I'm going to want my rest in peace, and that's probably it. I don't want Revoker. I don't want Recruiter. Usually board that guy out, despite the fact that he was real good there. And Palace Jailer is usually kind of questionable against like the Nimble Mongoose and potentially True Name Nemesis deck. YOLO. This hand's really good if I get an active vial. This hand's still very good if I just draw planes. I'll lose this game in all likelihood if my opponent just goes like days into Wasteland, but now that can't happen. It's possible I should have just like snap Wasteland my opponent there. And my opponent has had enough. Rogue Delver, confirmed unplayable. No. Merfolk is the best, the worst deck in the format. Not Rogue Delver. Rogue Delver's just bad. I think Rug Delver is like one new creature card away from being good, though. Like the Grixis decks have gotten some really good cards in the past few years. Like various flex options ranging from like Young Pyromancer to Bomat Courier to Gurmag Angler, and the Rug Delver decks have gotten flex playable Hooting Mandrills and like no other main deckable cards. So like the core of Rogue Delver hasn't changed since like 2014. It just hasn't gotten any upgrades, which is like kind of unfortunate for it. But it is probably like one more efficient creature in green away from being good. Whew, excuse me. No, I still think they print broken cards. I just think the cards are kind of like broken in different ways. Like, it used to be that the spells were just like terribly powerful and undercosted, and now it's the creatures that are getting pushed instead. So, like, if you view Gurmag Angler as like a 1 mana 5/5, that's absolutely insane, right? That's just crazy talk. And that's the sort of broken we're getting these days. Oh god, no. Please, please no hexproof delvers. Please no. That'd be that'd be terrifying. Not because like I'd be afraid of losing to it, but because in order to beat a hexproof delver, people would like start main decking things like marsh casualties, and then I'd die. Blue-green Deathrite. Alright. We realized that a green-black Deathrite was too good. What if we just make it blue instead, so it pitches to Force of Will? How could this plan ever go wrong? So I think my opponent plays some sort of weird homebrew bug control deck. So it's kind of unfortunate that they had that fatal push, because they only have one in their deck. Alright. I should say they only had one the last time they 5-0'd, because that was obviously incorrect. Well, if I can just draw a land, then I can beat this Bitter Blossom with Mirran Crusader very easily. Good thing I have a second Mirran Crusader for when they take the first Mirran Crusader. This is frustrating. So now I'm basically hoping my opponent doesn't have Toxic Deluge. All right. We drew out of that one, despite the fact that we stumbled on mana. All right, so for now, I'm going to call this blue-black control, but I imagine it's actually bug control. I might be wrong, though. So what sort of things do I want? Probably want Gideons. Probably want these. These are going to be questionable. I'm probably not going to board them in for game 2. And if my opponent shows me some things like Tarmogoyfs, then I'll board them in. This is a maybe. This is like potentially for things like Baleful Strix. Alright. So I probably don't want this. Probably don't. Not that. That's good. Probably don't want this. Counterspell's a little weird. I'm not sure exactly what I'm supposed to like think about that counterspell. Maybe I'll keep this in. I don't quite have enough information to board properly, I don't think. Like maybe I'm supposed to anticipate Dread of Night and like bring in my Battle Cat. I'm gonna put the Ballista on the bottom. It's too early in the game for me to want that. It's bug and rug. Come on, guys. Come on. I'm somewhat tempted to just like port my opponent. But I'm going to go ahead and present the first threat here. But I'm going to get Sword of Fire and Ice rather than Batterskull because I'm just like too afraid of a piece of removal just coming down. We've got tradition, folks. So many basics. All I want to do is wasteland my opponent. Well, Walking Ballista Buddy came back. I guess that's good. Mock Stub, I don't even know exactly what that means, but alright. Oh my god, a fourth basic? Fuck! I think that is a terrible use of Jitte counters, but I'm super happy that my opponent did that. Value. Holy shit, there's still more basics left in this deck? How? Also, this Thoughtseize to take my Revoker is super tilting. Still can't wasteland my opponent. In before my opponent also has the Fatal Push now to get my Stoneforge Mystic off the table and make it so their Snapcaster can connect. My opponent has a disgusting case of the perfects over there. I'm making you use this mana right now. So playing this just removes 2 Jitte counters from that, so it doesn't really make a lot of sense to do so. opponent should have pumped at least some here. How do I wiggle through this? If I Gideon and token, my opponent uses 2 Jitte counters to kill the token, then pumps Snapcaster Mage once in order to kill Gideon. I play Sanctum Prelate, my opponent uses 2 counters to kill it. Doesn't work. If I plus Gideon, my opponent could use 5 counters to kill it right now, or 2 counters on their turn. By Gideon minus, my opponent can just like pump with the Jitte and kill me. So I'm just gonna like take a line where if my opponent is like a total ape, maybe we can do something. Like if my opponent just like F6 after Gideon and I get to like make a token and equip the token, I guess that does something. Well, okay. My opponent just has it all. By the way, the next Moto update is going to change it so you can actually see how many charge counters are on Snapcaster Mage. Or that are on Jitte, sorry. The English language is very large. Please try to find a better phrase to describe something than AIDS. That's disappointing. Alright, so do I want to change anything knowing what my opponent is doing now? They're on this like blue-black mid-rangey plan. They've got a bunch of Snapcasters. I don't think enough to warrant Rest in Peace. I don't think the Jailer is going to be good. No, I think I've boarded approximately correct. Although, it actually, maybe these Chalices should come in. Chalice on 1 seems really good against what my opponent is doing, and if they're just blue-black, they can't get rid of it. Yeah. So maybe I like trim 2 Moms to play 2 Chalices. I think I like that. Alright. So we won game 1. Let's go to game 2. That's going to be a loss. So game 2 lost to multiple Strix and Snapcasters. So Potentia, our opponent is playing sort of a homebrew. It's a blue-black control deck. We are now in game 3. So that sword was an acceptable draw. Now that I've drawn that, I can get Batter Skull with this Stoneforge. Well, the good news is I'm getting a piece of equipment here. It's going into play. The bad news is that my opponent gets to pick which one. Yeah, so almost always in Legacy, if you are going and you are playing something with a whole bunch of powerful cards, it will be viable. Wow, they pick Recruiter over either one of the pieces of equipment. Because they have Dismember. I think there's no reason to use a Fatal Push on that Revoker right there. In before one of my opponent's last 2 cards is Umezawa's Jitte, and the other one is a land. In before that happens. Is Liliana of the Dark Realms the swamp one? Because I enjoyed the crap out of that card. So Looking at the texture of this game, my opponent's Bitter Blossom's actually very likely to kill them. So I should just take damage this turn where I can get it. And Moxdub, you say choice. I say mistake. So now on my turn, I can give my Stoneforge Mystic pro black and kill my opponent. I don't know what their game plan was in playing that Bitter Blossom. Like if I go for the equip and go in, then they're just going to like die to their own Bitter Blossom. Yeah, like what are you doing? What are you doing? You're dying to your own cards. On principle, I almost just want to like kill my opponent with their own cards. But since I have lethal right now, I guess I should just accept lethal. All right. Game 3, win with the opponent's cards. All right, let's do one more, chat. One more, and then I probably need to go and eat lunch. While we're waiting for this one, just to tease my donation goal deck list. I didn't upload version 2. All right. This is the sort of deck list that I will be playing when we hit my 3rd donation deck list goal. A Mangara of Corindor Ensnaring Bridge prison deck featuring Chalice of the Void. So this is what happens when we reach 3 donation deck lists. I've made some changes to this, and I still have some things I want to tweak, but that's the sort of thing that's coming, folks. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to keep this. This hand's a little loose, but it's so good if my opponent's playing a Delver. Like, to just like have a Mom on the play followed by a Swords to Plowshares is a great start, and if I draw something reasonable in the first couple of cards, that's very good for me. Speaking of, there are going to be sideboard Containment Priests, But I think the vials are just like too important to the deck to like draw Containment Priest at any time except for the times where I'm already winning like super hard. Let's see. In case my opponent is Rug Delver, I should just main phase this. Basic Plains is such a good Magic card. Force pitch a Spell Pierce. Okay. Again, in case my opponent is Rug. Let's play around Stifle. Okay, so we don't actually know which Delver deck my opponent is playing. Given statistical likelihood in the metagame, Grixis Delver is more likely, so I think I'm going to board for Grixis. Alright, so for Grixis Delver, I've been doing Ballista, Path, Judgment for Recruiters, Revokers, and this guy. If I was playing against Rug, I'd play these Rest in Peace. And I wouldn't play Walking Ballista. That's the second Inquisition we've seen today. I'm really hoping to draw a land so I can justify just like 100% snapping off this Wasteland here. Hell yeah. And Basic Plains, such a good draw. Such a good draw. Should play like 14 of those or something. Such a good draw. Now we will throw Stone Forges at my opponent until my opponent cries themselves to sleep. We'll be getting Batterskull with the first one. Just to give ourselves like the highest upside play if my opponent can't do anything about it. Right, yeah. We all do. Totally counts. Super happy to see this Abrade go on the Stoneforge rather than on a piece of equipment. And opponent is in a mana state where they opt not to wasteland us. That favors me. We leave the plains untapped here so that I can Swords to Plowshares on their turn if they play a creature. And we continue the equipment parade. Unfortunately, the Jitte is a terrible draw because that means my next Stoneforge doesn't cantrip, but whatever. Yeah, there's two black cards in the graveyard, so I was correct in my assumption that they were on Grixis. Alright, opponent, you think you're great with your red removal spells over there. Just wait till I have one Crusader boy who will be immune to those removal spells. And I am just gonna, I think, cast this bad boy here before my opponent gets bored and decides to wasteland me. Oh! Has so many red removal spells. I guess they've got to have something, and like this is probably going to be like a true name or something. All right, have fun with this hand. My hand is gas. All right, taking the council's judgment kind of like reaffirms my thoughts that they do have something like true name. Play that GSA first to play around Spell Pierce. Then I'll play my Stoneforge. Let's search. We did not find anything. Alright, I'm kind of the opinion that my opponent doesn't have any counterspells. So I'm just going to cast this. And pass the turn. Then I'll put in my Batter Skull, and then I'll equip that with Sword of Fire and Ice. Brightling's very good if you are playing against a lot of Miracles, Red Prison, Eldrazi, and Rug, but that's not the makeup of the metagame right now. Brightling will come back to the deck when there's less black in the metagame. Grixis Delver doesn't usually play Click. What do I want to do if my opponent just, like, Fatal Pushes this Germ? Probably bounce my Batter Skull and redeploy it on my turn. So I probably don't want to go for the Jitte equip as well. This is winning hard enough. Alright, so my opponent's going to get Snapcaster Abrade. Do I want to just, like, throw the Swords to Plowshares at this Snapcaster Mage? It's not all that scary. But my plan might just be to go wider than my opponent. So if I Swords this Snapcaster, I put them to 18. I play Stoneforge. I equip a Stoneforge with the Jitte. I swing in with, like, Batter Skull and Stoneforge with Jitte. And I either do 5 damage or 2 damage and get 2 Jitte counters. So I think that's the world I'm living in. Get out. I think my opponent's obligated to wasteland my port, so they're not taken off of black here. Nope. Yeah, that's a play I think they should have done last turn. Yeah, that second wasteline's actually very strong. Now I can't just do, like, Thalia bouncing shenanigans with Jitte counters. Am I willing to just trade a Thalia for 5 points of damage? Actually, I can probably trade a Stoneforge for 6 points of damage. Let's do that. Deal. Alright. And I will just go ahead and play that land in case my opponent is playing, I don't know, something silly like a Hymn to Torok, and they play that after getting a second black source or something. So do I want to attack him? I trade Thalia for damage. I don't think that's good. Just going to take my opponent off of black for things like Gurmag Angler. Fatal Push. Uncastable Fatal Push. Let's take this up to 3, shall we? Alright, Mom is something that will present lethal on the next turn if my opponent doesn't draw like a black source to Fatal Push, or if they don't have something like a Bolt. I guess the question is, like, should I just, like, attack for 4 anyway? And just, like, let this Thalia die? I don't think so. I think I just play this Mom, because with the Thalia in play, my opponent's resources are pretty taxed. Alright. Electricity is a thing that occurs. Alright, note that I made a mistake here by, like, F6ing. Post-combat, I should have equipped this to my Flicker Wisp. But it's not... Okay, maybe it's not, like, a guaranteed mistake, because, like, holding up 3 mana guarantees that I can bounce the Batterskull. Okay, is there any way that I'm guaranteed lethal this turn? No. No. No, my opponent's at 3. If I go Jitte on Thalia and attack, I actually like the True Name blocks the Batter Skull, the Delver blocks the Flicker Wisp, and then they only take 2 damage. So I do not have a way to guaranteed represent lethal this turn. Alright, how do I best play around the Fatal Push that is in my opponent's hand? I think I best play around the Fatal Push by keeping the highest number of bodies. And this is the play that's going to let me keep the highest number of bodies. Alright, folks, so we'll go to first strike damage. We'll always yield to our Umezawa's Jitte. Then, while still in first strike damage, we're going to kill this Delver to keep our Wisp. Alright, now I have 3 bodies. The Flicker Wisp is lethal in the air. The Batter Skull can be bounced. It can't just be abraded. Yep. Alright, so that ended up being Grixis Delver. Win into win. So the game to eventually beat True Name Nemesis with equipment. Alright, folks, this is going to be sort of the tail end of my stream now. Thank you, everyone who watched today. Again, my name is Phil Gallagher, and I run ThrabenU University. If you really like doing what I'm, if you really like watching what I'm doing and you like sweet legacy decks, consider following my channel. This deck, or something very similar to it, is something that you're going to end up seeing soon. This is my next donation goal. So when I get 3 donation deck lists, I will be playing a Mangaro of Corindor Ensnaring Bridge build, which also focuses on main deck Chalice of the Voids and like Ancient Tombs. So, pretty excited to get to play this in a little while. So I also want to thank my sponsors, Card Hoarder and Cardboard Live, for helping make it easier for me to continue to streaming. So I will be back on Monday night, folks. I will probably play some more D&T, although I've got a handful of other things that I want to be trying out. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a good Saturday afternoon. Goodbye.